unceded territory of the Silks people. And ask the CAO if there are any late items.
No, there are no late items, but the Fees and Charges Bylaw has been updated.
Thank you, and I believe that's in everyone's agenda online here.
Not been signed.
Moving to item D, adoption of prior minutes. And can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the Committee of the Whole, September 9th, 2019? Councilor Ventimilla, Councilor Schwarzenberger. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on then to water matters. Third quarter update of the 2018 to 2022 strategic priorities, operational plan, and departmental activities report. And I will turn that over to the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The report in front of you is for the third quarter of your strategic plan. And also there are operational plans and department quarterly updates attached to this as well. For the third quarter, I'm not gonna name off everything I've done. You've probably read through it, and you've probably read through the program itself. There has been progress made on the strategic priorities. It's shown with check marks for items that are completed, and there has been some adjustments to the status on a couple of the items. One being the traffic calming measures that was put to 2022. So what we were going to do this year was slightly changed, but that's been yellow since the beginning of the second quarter. And then the community to community forum funding has not been applied for with respect to that, so that's again a little bit behind. And then the red status on the regional aquatic facility priorities, the rural dividend funding has been suspended by the province at this time, so that has been sort of put on hold with regards to getting funding for the aquatic center feasibility study.
Thank you, Councilor Ventimilla.
That last one is the one that I had highlighted to ask about. So because the rural dividend funding was suspended, we did approve some allotment in a budget last year maybe, so I'm just wondering, do we have to do that again next year?
We carried it over into this year, and then you can carry it over again at the next budget.
So I don't remember where our last meeting left off with our other partners. Do we need to have another conversation if we want to actually go forward spending our own money?
Yes, we would, because at this time, we currently only have support for applying for the application to the rural dividend fund for the feasibility study.
Okay. So we need to arrange another meeting.
Yes.
Any other questions? So, the CEO, I guess at this point, there's no date really where they feel like the rural dividend fund's gonna be rerouted back to its original purpose.
Not at this point in time that I'm aware of. I know at UBCM they did pass that resolution to ask the province to reconsider suspending the funding for the rural dividend, and I'm not sure exactly where that's going at this point in time.
Any other questions?
Well, I think the premier in his speech on the last day said that was going to happen.
And can I get a motion to receive the report? Councilor Schwarzenberger, Mayor Johansson, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item F1 business. Oliver Tourism Agreement and CAO. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report is in front of council with respect to the request from the Oliver Tourism Association to extend the service agreement and increase the level of financial support from the funding partners. The town and the regional district Area C have an agreement with the OTA, and OTA has provided visitor information and tourism initiatives from the former CPR station building. It provides management of the Oliver Visitors Information Center, and the agreement that's attached to the report outlines how OTA was to use the fees and the expectations of the funding partners for the operation of the information center. Currently, the annual fee under that contract is through a basic fee of $28,000 from the town of Oliver, and then a joint service fee, which is funds an additional $2,800, and that's through the RDOS bylaw 1978. The contract is set to expire at the end of 2019, and OTA has approached the funding partners to request consideration of an increase in funding to meet the OTA's mission and vision for the Oliver Tourism Association. In the report, it talks to what they currently do, has the OTA's mission and vision, and then they've outlined a number of the things that they would like to undertake to reach those, to achieve their mission and their vision, which is to work with the municipality to complete and submit an application for the MRDT program, increase brand presence and recognition for Canada's wine capital, develop a new website for Oliver Tourism, maintain and promote a special events calendar for Oliver and Area C, strengthen relationships, partnerships, and the development of new experiences to market with the Venables Theatre, Coast Hotel, Area 27, Mount Baldy, and the Osoyoos Indian Band, and highlight existing farm-to-table culinary experiences with Oliver and Area C and develop a new agri-tourism experience. Increase the number of year-round experiences, including outdoor adventure activities and fringe season special events. Explore opportunities to maximize space at the visitor center for additional revenue generating attractions, i.e. bike rentals, patio cafe, interpretive salmon walking loop. And the current financial picture that they have, this doesn't allow them to address all of the initiatives that they have listed in earnest. And currently, they could only implement no more than one new item per year, primarily because they need to have an employee dedicating their time to these initiatives. So they're asking for an increase in financial support, either through a multi-year fee for service agreement or with short-term funding to execute some of their initiatives. OTA is requesting the funding partners to consider an increase to the annual fee for service of 20% to $67,200 per year. OTA would also like to request a one-time grant of $15,000 in 2020 to bring the total request to $82,200 for 2020. The increase in funding would assist the OTA in securing a general manager, associate director that would focus on the MRDT application, website development, and branding. I did put additional information that they provided me with respect to the MRDT and the possible rough estimate of how many units they have, which would bring a potential taxes received to OTA of $90,882. That's if the MRDT is implemented. So the initiatives outlined by OTA provide both tangible and intangible benefits to the town and Area C. The proposal from OTA also addresses a component of Council's strategic priority for community enhancement. Should the funding partners determine they would like to expand the scope of the agreement with OTA, Council may wish to consider having all funding provided through requisition from the RDOS under bylaw number 1978. There's also a possibility of the MRDT funds being used in support of the initiatives identified by OTA in the future as well. So it's not necessarily meaning that it would always be that high of a requisition amount required by them if there is consideration of expanding the scope of the agreement. So the options in front of Council are that Council and Electoral Area Director for Area C refer the request from OTA to the 2020-2023 budget process. Council and Electoral Area Director for Area C extend the service agreement with no change to funding and service levels from the previous agreement, or you refer it back to staff for additional information. The recommendation that is being proposed or being put forward is that Council and the Electoral Area Director for Area C refer the request from OTA to the 2020-23 budget process. And there is an outline there under the financial section with regards to how the funding would work. It's currently working, and then the proposed funding.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Chair. I'm on the OTA, that's one of my committees, so I'm very familiar with what they're asking for, and the $15,000 would go, the one-time ask would go towards getting the MRDT, which would bring in more revenue, which going forward would decrease the requisition. So I would look forward to discussing this further at budget time. I think that's the best course.
Councilman Angela?
That was gonna be my first question, that was just answered, what specifically was that 15,000 for, which makes total sense, then if you need a bit of a bump to get you to the place where there's a bit more stable funding, that seems to make sense. There was a couple things in here, I would also agree that budget time is gonna be the place to best talk about it, but there were some things in here that I just had questions about, so, it says in the report that we have that the current financial picture doesn't allow for the organization to address the above initiatives because they need to have an employee dedicating their time to these initiatives in addition to the visitor center coordinator. I thought there already were 2 full-time positions. I don't know if that's something you can ask or
There are, well, maybe Carol could answer that better than I can, but I believe there is a full-time position for a coordinator, and the executive director position is currently vacant.
But I just thought it was in the budget already for 2 full-time positions, and the way it's written here, it sounds like there's only budget for 1 position, and we need additional funds for another position.
Yes.
Come on up.
As the audience. Would you like me to stand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We do have a budget for staff, which is the visitor center coordinator. That is who we definitely have in the budget right now. The other position is about a $25,000 position that is funded right now almost completely from revenue sourced from Festival of the Grape, and does not put us in a very stable position to actually attack any of the priorities of the association, because the visitor center coordinator is doing exactly what she's supposed to do. She's managing the visitor center and the volunteers, and a lot to do with what happens managing visitors and making sure they have the best experience. The executive director, which we are reviewing that position, we would not be asking for an additional position on top of that. We would change, I think, the title of that position, and we're looking for someone whose mandate is to manage the visitor center coordinator and manage the priorities and the strategic direction of the association. And that instability right now of using funds from a one-day event to cover that position is not allowing us to really move forward on any of these initiatives that could provide that sustainable funding for the association.
So to follow up, then I have a couple of questions. So how many years has there been the executive director position, and has it always then been funded through other revenue?
So we piloted the position in 2018 after we purchased Festival of the Grape.
Okay, so
And
only
then
2 years?
2 years,
Okay,
yeah,
and both years through Festival of the Grape funding?
correct.
Okay. Thank you. I might have more questions, just a second here, looking at my notes.
Mayor Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions on the funding. First on the proposed changes to the sharing with the Regional District Area C, when would we have that conversation, and where would we have that conversation? Just wondering the appetite for the Regional District to consider increasing their funding on this. And the other
Okay.
question is just wondering about, this is a 3-year agreement, when the MRDT revenue would start happening and whether we would need to fund this at that level for 3 years if we were gonna start receiving that revenue in 2021.
Okay.
Like whether the MRDT funding would offset the increase
Yeah.
and we would only have to have it increase for 1 year.
It can happen that way, because when you requisition through the RDOS, you only requisition a certain amount. And, you can indicate how much you want to requisition for that particular year. So if we have a 3-year agreement and we're saying, as a whole, this is how much funding that's going on, if you bring in money from the MRDT, then that requisition amount can go down when you go to do it. That's if you go right through the RDOS. Am I correct in that? No? No, I'm not correct? Well, the economic development bylaw, you can state how much you want, there is no limit on it per se.
Yeah, so, the way I'm reading this is the agreement that we have with the association stipulates how much money they get per year. So, that would more or less stipulate what we'd raise under 1978 each year. If you put a specific amount into the agreement, that's what we're gonna give them. So if you have a 3-year agreement saying they're gonna get 28,000 a year, we're gonna raise 28,000 a year through, bylaw 1978. So you'd have to change the wording in the agreement, and I understand that you're looking at that now.
Yeah.
So we'd make that point at that time. The only other concern I have would be timing. So if council waits until they're through their budget process before they make a request to the regional district, I'm not sure we'd have time to get into our budget process in order to raise the funds in 2020. So we'd have to work on the timing on that one.
Councillor Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Mr. Newell. I know that, or I think I know that Heritage, isn't there a cap, or the Venables Theater, there's a cap, but you can requisition less? Is that a different situation than the situation with OTA?
You didn't tell me to prepare for that.
Oh, I'm very
I
sorry.
don't know. I'd have to check. Whatever the agreement says is what we do.
Okay, but I think there is wording in some of the agreements that it cannot exceed this amount, but it can be less than that amount. I
Yeah,
believe.
so it all depends on the agreement and how it's worded.
Celia.
Thank you, but I think he's also talking about the bylaws, the establishment bylaws where it has that section in there that says how much could be raised.
Right,
That's what you're talking about, is
Yes.
the bylaw itself, right?
the
The
establishment
heritage,
bylaw.
yeah, the establishment
I see.
bylaw. So in recreation, or in economic development, there is no limit.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Miller.
So I guess then, just following up on, say, O'Neill's comments, we would need to know when the regional district would need to know what our intentions are, to have that date and work back from it, because it is gonna be for our budgeting process. And then, I don't know if I'm totally understanding the chart in there correctly, I don't. The way that I am looking at it, are we still proposing to split in the way we've been splitting, percentage-wise, or are we then proposing to pool it all and split 50-50 with Area C?
It would be, what it is currently we provide $28,000 through our business licensing fees. And then the other 28,000, is split between Oliver and the RDOS, and Oliver, of that 28,000, pays 15,926, and Area C pays 12,074, making a total of 56. If you choose to go right directly through the RDOS bylaw itself, then it's split 56-44, and there's nothing provided through our fees in the town. It would be strictly a regional service, or a sub-regional service.
Split a little bit more equally.
Yet the way that it's split with other services that we share with them on the assessed value.
So it seems like we're having two separate conversations. One is about increasing the budget for Oliver Tourism, just in general, and the other is about changing the structure through which we fund them. Is that correct?
Well, there's the request from OTA to expand the service. As partners, which is the town of Oliver and Osoyoos, or I should say, electoral area C. It's a decision you have to make together as to whether or not you want to expand the service or leave it the way it is. So there's that you have to deal with. If you want to expand it to provide them additional funding, then there's, the staff are saying it might be better to go through the regional district to have the funding put through there, so that it's more, because both Area C and the town of Oliver are benefiting just about equally to the services that are being provided by OTA.
And then, sorry, I think this is my last follow-up. So then, to try and understand why it is the way that it is, why was it done the way that it was done in the first place? With it being portioned out where Oliver had its own 28,000 and then we shared an extra 28,000, as opposed to just doing it straight across the board in the first place.
The history guides in the.
Okay.
I'm.
History guy wasn't paying, oh, which one?
It would
I saw
be-
somebody jumping in.
Yeah, it was done prior to me coming
Okay.
here, so I'm not sure exactly of the history, because at one point, the chamber was looking after it,
Mhm,
and then OTA got involved in it,
mhm.
and I'm
No.
not sure exactly.
I'm just wondering if we're looking at making it a little bit more equitable now, why it was done this way in the first place. I don't know if you remember why it was that the town had its own 28,000 aside from our joint 28,000. Do you know that?
No, I do not.
No, the only other person in the room that might know that would be Mr. Benes.
For question period, I don't know if that's
Yeah.
appropriate. Perhaps we could just have that information for when we do
Okay,
get to the budget process. And then I would also like to know as well, perhaps when we're going through our budget process as well, if we can have some more information on what the FOG revenue is, or their P&L, and maybe get a little bit, we can go a couple of years into.
yes, I do believe OTA is coming forward at the next meeting to present their budget, to council, so I'm sure that information will be included in it. Okay?
Councilor Schwarzenberger.
Just a thought as I'm sitting here, maybe we could get the two directors to meet and decide if there's any appetite for changing how this works, and then, as you said, Councilor Ventimille, work backwards so that we can do this in time for the RDOS's budget process.
Well, and to follow up, if I may, that was kind of my point, is that we're having two different conversations, so it's like we need to see if that's even gonna be palatable for our regional director, and if it is, then we have another conversation of what's the budget gonna be.
Right.
Samuel?
I'm okay, thank you.
Any further discussion?
I guess I just have one more thing. It's just an observation. I think that it's great that the Oliver Tourism Association has been able to fund this executive director, or whatever the role's going to be called, through revenue from the festival of revenue. That's kind of what you would hope, is that would be the point. You get seed funding, and then to grow all of these other areas and be able to build on that. But it does potentially make sense to inject a bit to be able to get them to a place where then you can go to the next growth level, which is maybe the MRDT.
I'd agree, like, that there's the potential for financial instability there depending on how the revenues are for 1 year. I mean, my sort of thinking aloud though is an increase in funding going to improve the organizational stability? But that's sort of to be seen, that's not a question I can answer. So we have a proposed motion, although I think that may need to be changed if we're going to have the discussion prior to our 2020-2023 budget process. Leave it to the corporate officer to wordsmith that.
request Councilman DeMille to meet with Area C Director.
Okay, so we have a proposed motion. Mover. Councilor Schwarzenberger, second. Councilor Camila, any further discussion? Call the question, all those in favor, opposed, motion carries. Moving on to F2, Fees and Charges Bylaw 1383, and I will turn it over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Chair. Grace?
Yep.
The Fees and Charges Bylaw 1383, that's before the Committee of the Whole for consideration, is a new bylaw that consolidates multiple bylaws within the town of Oliver, excluding the water and sewer bylaws at this point. Fees and charges, where the town of Oliver has the ability to impose fees and charges for services that are provided. And they are, like I said, located in a number of different bylaws. For ease of reference, this new bylaw will consolidate all the fees and charges into one bylaw for council's consideration. The new bylaw contains schedules that relate to fees, general fees, building permit fees, business license fees, development service fees, animal control, good neighbor, solid waste, the cemetery, fire control, controlled substance, Oliver Airport, FOI, and a new category for legal. We'll go through each of the schedules with you. Each staff member is going to be doing them as they relate to their department. And we do have a recommendation for the Committee of the Whole to move this item up to the regular meeting this evening for first, second, and third readings. So the first schedule is the general fees, and I will move that to the Chief Financial Officer to give you a quick overview.
I'm looking for 'em.
Okay.
What's the schedule, is that one?
Schedule
Page
one.
three?
Page 3.
Was way off.
I have that on page 3 of my report.
I'm coming to it.
Okay. I moved too fast.
Okay, here we go. Oh, the changes that are proposed in this section of the bylaw are introduced to council strictly to keep up with other municipalities and what is actually in the fees that are being charged in the various municipalities as well, whether they be in the Okanagan Valley or in some cases just industry stranded like NSF charges. In fact, I was just looking online the other day with NSF charges at banks. We're recommending $40. Banks are now charging $45 for an NSF fee, and that seems a lot of money, but that is the standard. Our property tax certificate, we were currently charging $35. We're just bumping that up to $40. There are some new fees that are being proposed from my previous experience. One is the account transfer fee, and what that means is when you pay a incorrect account, usually it's by accident. Like, that's how come we're saying the first time we'll waive that fee. Usually when that occurs is when you move and you forget to actually change your bank account information, because a lot of people pay through the EFT now, and they will pay to the old account, and all of a sudden they wonder how come they got their account in arrears, or the tax account, the utility account, and then they find out that they just forgot to actually update their profile in their own bank. And so we're saying we'll waive that the first time. We tell you that, but in the second time we're not going to waive that, so there'd be a $25 fee for that. Because there is actually a lot of administration work to number one, send arrears notices out, contact people, because we don't necessarily like being the bad guy to tell people that you paid the wrong account, and then usually we get, say, why are we, have the account, what's this statement all about? The other one, the refund of overpayments, this usually occurs at tax time, where the mortgage companies are paying the tax account and they don't take into account the homeowner grant, and they're paying it gross. And so therefore, we have to turn around and refunding the homeowner grant portion always back to the, either to the bank or to the actual individual, the property owner. Everybody, certainly in the lower mainland, and I know up and down the valley, charges a refund fee for that, and so that's what's being proposed here. The next one, the 6.9, is the mortgage roll portfolio. What that is a fee that we charge mortgage companies. In fact, I was quite shocked that Oliver didn't do that, but it's a fee that we charge to give them the tax information in a digital format, so they can give it back to us. And that's $15 per folio. The apportioned one, the 6.10, doesn't get used a lot, but it can happen. In fact, I think we had one last year where if there's a subdivision, it's a timing issue between when the subdivision is actually registered at land titles and the assessment roll is closed, but there is, within the community charter, there's a section that allows the developer to still apply for an apportionment, of which the municipality, as long as they can do it within their timelines, has to do it. And so therefore what happens is we actually have to be in a lot of contact, not a lot, but a contact with the British Class BC Assessment Authority, and then we turn around, there's a lot of back and forth. We need a folio number, we need a legal description of folio, and obviously we need an assessment, and we can't get that without their cooperation. The reason developers do that is because, number one, they don't want to pay the taxes. They want to spread that out to whoever. Now they may go, well, you haven't even sold them yet, but if they do sell them during the year, then of course the conveyancers are going to make any adjustments. Plus, they also get the homeowner grant. Without that, they don't get the homeowner grant. So there's it might not be a big deal here in Oliver, it's a big deal when you're dealing with condos, specifically for that. So that's the changes that I'm proposing in the finance fee section.
And additionally, the commissioner services is being removed. That's not something that we're even allowed to do under the charter. We can do things that are related to the town only, but we can't provide commissioner services for somebody coming in off the street. So that's just strictly been removed from the fee schedule. And as well, the administrative fee, in the new bylaw, it's just noted on every page that there's administrative fee for recoverable costs. What we've have determined that the administrative fee was not being consistently applied for recoverable costs, so it's just to make staff more aware that on a recoverable cost we charge the 15%. Municipalities, other municipalities in the area, they charge up to 18%, so we're just a little bit lower. Any questions for the CFO on that schedule?
Mayor Johansson?
Chair, I just had some questions about the vacant building registration permit and the category, that's category 1.0 under Central 6, and then the excessive nuisance abatement fees under 3, and just wondering if those excessive nuisance abatement fees do apply to vacant buildings that are becoming nuisance properties, fires not being demolished on a timely manner, not being boarded up properly, having still visits by police and the fire department.
Where are we?
What page are you on?
He's down to page
Item
9.
5, page 8, isn't it?
Page 14.
Oh,
Page 14 of the fees and charges amended, section 6.2.
Are we gonna be going through
We're gonna
sections?
go
Yeah,
through
yeah.
each section, so if you
Okay.
wanted to hold
Okay,
that question,
so you want
and then
to
we can think about that too.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any
So
questions
scheduled, no,
relating
sorry, any
to-
other?
I was just gonna say, any
sorry.
questions relating to schedule one, general?
Schedule 2 is the building permit fee, proposed fees and existing fee changes, so that'll move that to the Director of Development Services for comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With these, the building permit fees, the only real increase is, so right now, there's the $50 permit fee, and then there's a $8 charge per $1,000 in construction value. and that's the permit fees, so inspections, processing, all of that. So I did a bit of digging on that, and it hasn't changed since 1998. So in 1998, building bylaw number 917, it was $8. I mean, costs have gone up quite a bit since then, and also other municipalities typically in the area charge $10 to $12 per $1,000. So with that, staff are recommending that it be increased to $10 per $1,000. And what that equates to is on a $450,000 house, if we say that's kind of a standard cost for a house nowadays, then that'll be an increase of $900 in fees to the applicant. But we feel that that'll better cover our expenses, especially with the application fee is only $50, right? So that's very little. So we keep that the same, but then increase the per $1,000 construction value cost. That's really the only one in the building permit fees that I see. Any
Yeah.
questions?
Thank you. With regards to the 4-month extension to an existing permit, remove it. I felt that if you have 2 years to do a building, that if you don't have it done in 2 years, then you should go through the whole process again, not have an extra little extension then. So that's why I suggested removing that one.
Any questions for Schedule 2, Council President?
I have a question after that comment. I guess I didn't understand it that way when I read it. So my question then would be, how common is the use of that 4-month extension? And what's the practice of kind of our neighboring communities?
I would say that I haven't ever seen it being used. Cause, lots of times we don't even get them to, we don't track. Currently, we're not doing a good job of tracking when, permits are coming due and providing that notice to people saying your permit is due it's due to expire on this date.
So people might be constructing past the date of their permit and it's just happening.
So I assume that's something in the future that will be working, tracking better.
Yes.
Any other questions for Section 2, or Schedule 2, sorry, Council Benjamin?
Well, just back to that same one, it's not really another question. I guess I would just be interested to know then what happens in neighboring communities as far as that goes, because if we don't know how often that potentially would be used, I'm just trying to find the fees. If you're gonna go over by like a month or 6 weeks, that's another $900 in fees instead of $50.
Not necessarily, it would be on the outstanding construction.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions for Schedule 2? None.
Thank you. Schedule 3, the business license fees. I will refer to the Director of Development Services again.
Thank you. So with the business license fees, it's been summarized in a better way that reflects the defined uses in the zoning bylaw. So before there was terms like supermarket, well that's a retail store, right? So we removed that and grouped it into the retail component. There was also many other, it says standard business license fee of $100, and then it listed different uses and said $100. Well, why do you need to list it as being 100 and then list it again, right? So it's summarizing it, making it easier to understand. The major increases in the fees and fees here are the bed and breakfast operations and then vacation rental as well. So currently the bed and breakfast one is applied as a home occupation, which I believe is $75. So that's gonna be increased to $200 to be on par with vacation rentals at $200. The main reason for that is I feel there'll be inspections required. So when an applicant applies, we'll have to review the application. It'll be a bit more than just a standard business license application. So we'll want them to submit a floor plan or a site plan, and then our inspector will have to go out on site as well, just to do a walk through their place, make sure all health and safety items are addressed. So that's why that one's seeing a pretty significant increase to 200. I mean, really in the business license, as Diane said, it's being moved. It's being moved from the business license bylaw into the fees and charges bylaw, just to make it easier for people to locate. But there's not really much more to say about that. Thank you.
Any questions or discussions around Schedule 3? Councillor Schwarzenberg?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, it just seems like a really big bump for the bed and breakfast end of things. And I understand you're, looking at zoning and site maps and all that kind of stuff, but that seems to be more on the vacation rental side, or would be more on the vacation rental side, because a Airbnb, you're just renting out a bedroom, not the whole unit. And so, I just wonder have you gone to any research as to what other communities are charging for B&Bs as opposed to vacation rentals, or do they lump them all together, or?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the only one I really looked at was Kelowna, and they charged. Well, I mean, we can't really compare it to Kelowna, right? It was $400 for a principal resident vacation rental, and upwards of $700 if it's not your principal residence. But I did not look at the difference between B&Bs and vacation rentals. But my rationale is that they are similar. We're going to need to see the exact same application form. If it's a B&B, we're going to want to go out on site and make sure there's not an additional kitchen there. We're going to want to make sure the parking is addressed, right? So I felt they are pretty similar uses. They're used for the vacationing for tourists, so that's part of the rationale as to why we just decided to keep them the exact same.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Moving on to Schedule 4.
Thank you. Schedule for the development services fees, of course, will be the Director
Yep.
of Development Services.
So that's me again. Yeah, the increases here are the OCP and zoning application fees were $1,000, and staff are recommending to increase those $250. So the main reason for that is, of that $1,000, what it used to be, the application fee was approximately $550 of that is just simply notification. So newspaper ads, preparing the letters and sending them to adjacents, so putting stamps on, say, 50 different notices. So $550 of that $1,000 is not going towards the town, right? So that leaves $450 for processing, me writing the report, council meeting and talking about it. I mean, there's a lot that's involved, and I felt that $450 wasn't enough of that extra buffer, so increasing that to $1,250. And then also the variance, I'm recommending the variance goes from 400 to 500 as well, and that's mainly, I mean, like I said, I did some research on this one as well, and these fees haven't changed since 2006. So 13 years later, costs have gone up, staff costs have gone up as well. So that's part of the rationale for this. Thank you.
Here's some new ones.
New sign.
Where's that one? That's down.
That's right there, public notification sign,
13.1.
Okay, buddy.
right in the same spot.
13.1. Okay, the other recommendation is, so currently for zoning and OCP amendments and temporary use permits, an applicant has to pay $42 for a sign, and then it's a handwritten sign in black and white, and they, Nancy writes on them, and they come and pick them up, and then they have to go install them on site. So what I did was a bit of research, and I'll actually show you because I'm pretty excited. So this is what the sign used to look like, right? And so $41, they come and pick it up, they install it. So part of the issue there is, trying to get them to install it in the right spot. It has to be in a certain part of the property, visible. So what we did is we worked with a sign company, and for $100, we'll basically this is what the signs will look like. So they'll pay $100, but we'll have our sign company install it. So that's the value they're getting, right? So it'll go up $58, but then they don't have to worry about it, because a lot of times developers have to arrange to get someone to come down to get the property owner, someone to come down and pick up the sign from town hall and to go on site and install it. So this is the fee, it'll be $100, but yeah, this is what the signs will look like, so we're pretty excited. I mean, there you go, anyone watching at home. That's a good look. Yeah, so it's something we're pretty excited about. The costs, you know, it was very minimal to get the sign company to do this because they already have all our colors and, you know, it was like an hour work for them. The main cost will be to actually build the sign. So what they'll have to do is build 3 or 4 bases. So they'll be like aluminum bases. That what they'll do is every time we ask them, we have the template, we'll type it up, send it to them. They'll print it and just put it over top of the other one. And they'll go out there and install it. So they're just putting it on top every time. So they're not throwing out, you know, because once you write on this, it's kind of garbage, right? So the idea is they'll just print the vinyl and put it on over top. Yeah, so that's what that increase is for. So, yeah. Any questions?
Councilor Benjamin?
It's not a question, but I can see why you're excited. $58 for a much nicer looking sign
Yeah.
installed and everything
Exactly.
is a pretty good deal.
Installed and removed.
And then knowing that
Yeah,
you just
and it'll
slap
be
over
removed.
a new sticker makes it even better.
Yeah, exactly, and they won't have to worry about it, right? Because a lot of the time it's for developers, it's time, right? Like, oh, now I gotta go pick up the sign and try to figure out where to put it. But now they're just paying it, and I think it's gonna be a way better look for the town. It looks more professional.
And the public will notice.
Good job.
Yeah, they will. Thank you. You like that form?
Good job being excited.
Thanks. All right.
Excited
Just through the chair, there are additional subdivision charges that the director didn't speak to. They were not previously identified as chargeable fees, so that's just making a correction in the subdivision component for the town.
Any further discussion of Schedule 4? Moving on to Schedule 6.
Schedule 6, that's just noting that fee has always been there, just actually showing it so it reads properly. Before it just said 25% of total cost, which didn't really make sense. If it was a cost to go out and clean up a property, we're not charging you 25% of that, we're charging you the whole amount plus 25%, so it's just a correction in the wording to make that more clear.
Any discussion of Schedule 6?
I hope we didn't actually charge anyone only 25%.
I don't think that occurred, but just want to make sure that that didn't occur. Section 9, the fire control fees. The fire department's not here to speak to it, but it is really noting that we want to charge for actual costs. So each fee is the actual cost for the fire department to respond to an incident. And section 2.1, if the fire department equipment is called out, there is a schedule that's been prepared by the province and the fire commissioner's office. It's updated every year, so that states the fees that everybody will be using in the province for a call out. Perchance, if our fire department goes out to a call for the forestry service to, let's say, Quesnel, that would be the fee that we would charge out. Just like when all the fire departments came here for the Eagle Bluff fire, those fees in that schedule, that's what was paid to them.
Any questions or discussion?
I didn't have a question about that portion of it, but I had a question about the open air burning permit
Oh,
application.
yes, sorry, I passed over that one. So how it was written before in the fire control bylaw. It said a burning inspection, and so the fire chief said he doesn't really wanna go out and inspect a burn. So if people are wanting to burn, there's very limited burning in the town of Oliver, there's just a couple of properties, but if they did want to burn, they would get charged $30 and he would go out if he had to inspect it. So it's just the same amount, it's just saying that it's an application and an inspection if required.
But
There wasn't.
There wasn't a fee at all
No.
before, so this is.
There was, I think it was $15 for an inspection. So the fire chief says it makes more sense to say it's an application to burn, and it would be $30, but I would, also inspect it, so it would be an application and an inspection fee all together. And the, regional district, they charge $30 for their permits, for their applications for burns.
If I would follow up, so I'm just trying to understand, so we're talking like orchardists trimming down trees and burning,
Right.
that sort of burn. Okay, I didn't realize there was a fee associated to it even in the regional district, I thought there was just that number that you call
No.
for the burning index.
No, it's a
See if you
$30
can do it.
application fee, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
A lot of them don't call.
Pardon?
A lot of them don't call.
Well, I've called before,
Yeah.
I've called and talked to the fire chief and
Mm-hmm,
it's burning day,
right, as long as it's a venting day, right, yeah.
but I told him I was
Yeah.
paying attention to it,
Mhm.
in town or in the regional districts.
In area C?
There we go.
Yeah, very cool.
There we go.
Any other questions or
okay.
discussion? I just have one, so failure to arrive and attend alarm, I'm just curious what that means, is that like for business or CEO?
Thank you, yes, that would be for a business, like if our alarm goes off and the fire department comes, but nobody else comes,
Okay,
nobody that owns the property comes, that happens, I think, down on Main Street there at the jewelers. His alarm goes off quite often.
And nobody comes to shut it off.
to section 10?
Okay, section 10 is under the controlled substance bylaw that we currently have. There were, for each category, an existing fee of an amount that was likely very low. So now moving it to actual cost. In this instance, we're increasing the administrative fee to 25% because of the nature of the calls. Our administrative fee, like I mentioned earlier, would be 15%, but in these cases, it would be the 25%. So through each one for cleanup, for a fire department call, a public works call out, it will be the actual cost plus 25%. And I believe the mayor had a question about vacant buildings
Yeah.
in this
so-
category, so.
Well, it was in that category, I'll have to go to it, but this also brings, would be interested to know, like the house on the Rural Crescent, that we're well aware of.
Mhm.
Was there additional charges for the fire department to attend that building?
It was the actual cost. No, that was the nuisance fee cost, I
Yeah.
think that was charged for that.
For the fire itself, no, that was a fire call per se. This is talked to controlled substance fee, so that's if it's got a grow up in it or something like that that's illegal. That's what that one was for, that we're looking here, but that was just an actual fire, even though it was a nuisance property, it was just a fire call.
Is there a way we can tie that? I mean, that was really a nuisance property. Our CMP had been there over 70 times.
Yeah,
It seems unreasonable to me that the fire department would attend that, and the landlord wouldn't have been held responsible for something that could be foreseeable. You know, just trying to provide a little more rigor to it. If you look at
Yeah.
that section point 2, we've got now vacant buildings in town that have had
have to go down to your,
had 2 fires, Earl Crescent being one, the one on Station Street next to Oliver Eats being the other one.
okay,
I'm looking at the one on Earl Crescent, I drove by there the other day. It doesn't look to me like it's being maintained properly as a vacant building. There's windows that aren't boarded up. It sure looks like somebody's going in and out of the upper building.
okay.
Um,
What page are you on?
14.
14.
Which, the bylaw?
I guess our nuisance bylaw update that we're gonna come with may provide us an avenue to be able to identify a house as a nuisance property, and it may not even be a controlled substance issue, it may be just a flop house necessarily where people are squatting in there or doing other things. Vacant buildings are becoming just as much of a nuisance as houses that are actively being, with multiple people living in there, but you've got vacant buildings where people are trying to break in, and people, you know, they're not being demolished.
Yeah, we could add something on with regards to vacant buildings, not being maintained properly.
Well, I mean, the
Yeah.
fires that are starting in those vacant
Yeah.
buildings are not because of an electrical fire necessarily or something, they're generally by people getting in there, maybe trying to light a fire to keep themselves warm.
Yeah, for sure. We can add,
If the landlord is maintaining that vacant building as to the requirements of the vacant building registration permit, which I'm sure they have to have liability insurance, they've got to be boarded up, they've got to have
yeah,
that permit in place with a path
And
to demolish it.
I honestly can say that I do not know of anybody that's come in to get a permit for a vacant building. I'm not even sure if they did for 480 Banks, did they?
I don't think they came in for a permit, but we did give them the, requirements to board that building up.
So those but that building on Station Street and that one on Earl they should have vacant building
Permits.
registration permits
Yeah.
and all the requirements associated with those permits in place.
Yeah, we can definitely reach out to them and let them know that.
Yeah.
So this would go under good neighbor bylaw, because here's vacant.
I am looking.
Okay, good.
So, it would just be added into that vacant building, I guess you can go,
I guess it'd be good to know how you're gonna tie vacant buildings into nuisance properties,
Yeah.
which are becoming one and the same in some circumstances.
so you can almost put it in as 3.3 as, unmaintained vacant buildings. Under excessive abatement fees, so you could go with 3.4 and actual costs there.
Councilman Taylor?
I guess I have a follow-up question to that, and something that I've never really thought of before, just based on this conversation. If we have people, and we're talking about vacant buildings right now, so specifically vacant buildings that we know aren't applying for the permits that they're meant to apply for, what sort of recourse do we have? What can we actually do about that?
There's probably, I can't say for sure, but I'm sure that there's probably something in our MTI bylaw and our bond, our bylaw enforcement notices, that they could be fined for not having their permits or not doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be worth looking into
Yeah.
as well, to know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, can we
It
give
would-
you a warning and you've got 14 days and now it's a double fee, or like, I'm just making that up, but there's gotta be something,
Yeah.
otherwise why would you ever apply for a permit?
Well, it's due diligence to make sure that they are registered and maintained in a proper way when they are vacant, so that they don't become a liability. And they also have the insurance if something does happen on that property, that a neighboring property
And
that
we-
would suffer damage
We do
would be
need,
taken care of.
we do need to make sure our building inspector is, ensures that he follows this and puts it into play when he's out there.
Well, absolutely.
So I'll have our Director of Development Services, speak with him and reach out to those properties. I know we have been in contact with the bank with regards to Earl Crescent. Have we provided them with what they need to do to make sure it's boarded up properly?
Yeah, I have talked with them a few times and made them well aware that the requirements are in the good neighbor bylaw. But no, I have not had them get an actual permit for a vacant building, so that would be the next thing to do. And to probably send them a more formal letter with our concerns.
We have $100 fine for failure to obtain a vacant building registration permit, and also another $100 fine for failing to display the permit on the building.
So not, sorry, can I think of that, not necessarily insurance, if you're
Yeah, I'm thinking that
not
could use
really
a,
caring.
Use a bump,
Considering the state
Could
of
use a
the
bump?
for the sound.
like with an extra zero on the end.
It,
You read my mind.
So this is going to be, not maintained,
Sorry.
unmaintained vehicles.
Well, I drive by that one and I'll press it.
Yes, because we would probably go in.
I'm just waiting until things start.
Do it.
Right. Okay.
So,
Celia?
thank you. So what we're suggesting is under the nuisance, excessive nuisance abatement fees, under the good neighbor bylaw in the schedule is putting in 3.4, and it would be vacant building unmaintained and put actual costs, and we would probably go in and do it properly, and then they would have to pay those actual costs for us to do it. Plus get a permit,
That makes sense. I mean,
plus
the
plus
priority that actually
25%
gets
on
done.
Yes.
If I may, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, well, actual costs, I mean, I think it should be actual costs plus a percentage.
I just said 25%.
Yeah, because we need a deterrent factor in here. Actual cost just means, well, I don't have to do it, so the town's gonna do it,
Yeah.
and we'll pay the bill, right?
Yeah, plus 25%,
Mhm.
because it's, something that they should do. So I would go beyond the 15 and go 25.
Any further discussion of section 10?
So then this is gonna come back to us, or
Tonight,
tonight?
we'll have those amendments in there for tonight.
Thank you for the suggestions. The new category is section 13, legal documents. There have been these items throughout other bylaws, and we've just brought them together in one section or schedule, which seems to make more sense for people to come and locate. What we have found was that there was multiple charges in different bylaws, so we're just changing it so it's the actual cost. If you have to get a state of title certificate, we can do that for applicants, and it depends on what it is, the amount can be different. So it could be $20 or it could be $35. It depends on the type of document that it is. So the actuality is that we just are charging our recoverable cost on that plus the 15%. Additionally, for preparation of documents, easements or covenants, and discharging, the Director of Development Services had a conversation with our solicitor one day, and he said that those fees should really just be actual costs plus an administrative fee, not trying to estimate what we think that cost may be.
Yeah, so before it said $250 to prepare a discharge or a covenant, and I've seen before that that cost could be $700, right? So it's depending on how complicated it is, so it's better to have actual costs in there.
So I think overall, not a lot of changes in the actual fees, but what we have changed is that they are actual costs. We are recovering what the costs actually are for the town of Oliver plus an administrative fee. And then plus bringing it all in one bylaw, we have the opportunity to bring it forward to council before budget time each year. It can be amended throughout the year, of course, but we can bring it forward at budget time for consideration for any other amendments to fees and charges.
Councilman Bennett?
My only thought when I was reading through, there's lots of places that say actual cost, and maybe I'm just complicating it in my mind, but how does somebody know when they come in then that it's potentially $700 instead of $50? Like, is there any way to make a minimum charge or put a range, or is that just a conversation that's had over the counter naturally?
We give them a sort of an estimate
Okay.
as to what it is.
So for example, somebody coming in for that 11.2, I don't know, any one of those,
Yeah.
the conversation would be had that,
Yeah.
this could be anywhere in the range of 500 to 1,000, maybe,
Yeah.
Might be even a little more.
Mhm.
So at least
We
there's
do
no
have that
super big
conversation with them
surprises.
so that they're aware of it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
For sure.
Yeah.
just have one question, what is a comfort letter?
Those are requested often from real estate firms. If a person is wanting to sell their property and they have a buyer in place, that buyer wants some comfort that the property is free of any encumbrances by the town. So it's a clear parcel that they will be purchasing.
Like it meets the zoning, there's the
Previous-
building
Yeah,
permit,
previous
everything.
bylaw infractions, outstanding building permits. You know, they ask questions like, is it an ALR? You know, some things that are just standard, and they all look the same. It's like the lawyers just, it's like a
format.
template, yeah.
Mhm.
But that's what it is for.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No question. I was gonna move the proposed motion that's up there, but I think you have to say
As a minute.
amended fees and schedule bylaw as amended.
Oops. Thank you, Counselor Schwarzenberg. We have a mover and a seconder. Mayor Johansson, any further discussion? Yeah, Councilor
Oh,
Miller?
I'm sorry,
Oh.
that was my fault.
Hearing.
That was your
All
own
in
favorite
favor?
figure.
Opposed, and motion carried. Moving on to item F3, 2020 council appointments, and I'll turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you. This is in front of you for the 2020 council appointment review. It's just for information at this point in time, and due to the fact that the local government elections have changed into October, appointments to the RDOS board and other outside agencies will need to be completed in November, starting, well, it started at the last election. So we're just sort of moving it up so that it's on a yearly basis, that you consider looking at these and then reviewing it, and we will bring it forward to the October 28th, 2019 meeting for appointments to be undertaken then at that point in time. The Food Action Advisory Committee, that's possibly going to be finished at the end of this year, and you'll have to determine if you want that committee to continue in its current form. Again, the Child and Youth Center Advisory Committee, the last meeting was held in September of 2017. And the next meeting is to be determined and held in Osoyoos, and have not seen anything happen at this point in time, so the status of that advisory committee will have to be checked. And although since the Chamber of Commerce is now
It's now
an
inactive.
active organization, so I don't know if we have anybody appointed to the chamber at this point in time.
Yeah.
We do?
That's-
Okay. So, those appointments were made in 2019, and, this just gives you the opportunity to review what we have currently and to talk amongst yourselves and decide if you wanna move or if you wanna stay, or should you stay or should you go?
I feel like there needs to be background music for that one.
Mayor Johansson?
Okay, so it's just for
Yeah, raise my
information.
Thought so. We have some time if there's an appetite for discussion right now. I don't wanna go through committee by committee, or, I mean, it might be better with, Counselor Matta's here, since he's not here today as well.
So this would be a committee of the whole in,
It can
2
be a
weeks'
committee of the
time.
whole, yes, because you have the ability to do appointments at that committee of the whole meeting.
if I may, Madam Chair, I think Councilor Matta should be here for that discussion.
So perhaps we can choose our favorites in our own time and bring that back to the next committee of the whole
Well,
meeting.
I would maybe just suggest if there's anybody that really wants to get rid of something or really has a hankering for something, that throw it on the table now, so you have a couple weeks to think about it. Cause that is at our next meeting, then we'll make the decision.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason we can't have a discussion, we just can't make any appointments at this point. Did you have a hankering for it?
No, I didn't have hankering for anything, so the only thing that, so in the, sorry, I'm just scrolling back. So in the Organizational Food Action Advisory Committee, the grant funding ended last year, and we've done with the balance, I think. Until we go through budgets, we still need to have somebody on those committees, and maybe continues. That was the one comment that I had there.
I mean, there are some that I think it makes sense to have some continuity with and not necessarily shuffle everything just for the sake of shuffling.
I have been on Parks and Rec for 2 years, and if somebody else is interested in Parks and Rec, I could move to alternate or move off that, whatever. I think it's a good idea that we all, through the 4 years, try and get our hand in to just about everything, so.
And I don't mind taking that from alternate, so I attended one meeting this year.
But it was a
Someone else
barn
wants
burner.
to- That was the
I
one.
attended some of those meetings, they were pretty good.
Yeah, no, they're fun.
But I think like for the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Committee, for example, I mean, I don't think either of us wanna step on that, or I speak for myself.
That's a 2-year appointment in terms of reference on that one.
Oh, good.
You're
Okay.
staffed for another year.
Well, and I'd like to be, cause I think it's just sort of building right now, we'd have to step away from
And I've only been 1 year on Oliver Tourism, and they're going through a lot of upheaval, so I'd like to kind of hang on to that one. And
I'm gonna ask what the OCC committee is, 'cause I'm on there, but I've never gone to a meeting.
that. No.
That's the Okanagan Correctional Center.
Yeah, is that a committee, is that just a?
It's not a committee of ours per se, it's a committee that they have set up.
Cause I sit on the community advisory
Yeah.
board for OCC, but that's, you're
That's
not
the same
getting
one.
those invitations,
Pardon
I
me?
don't think.
That's the same one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've never gotten an invitation for that.
they're the ones that we request the individuals on there, so I'm not sure.
Because I was on there
We can check
prior to
with
being
Deborah, or Deb,
Mhm.
we can check with the warden.
It'll be interesting to see where your invites are from, if there's a town, prior to council.
I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was on there prior to being on council.
Yeah.
So they must, maybe they didn't get the memo on their updates or something. The only one that I would say, I took on the Heritage Society last year, and I really like it, and I do agree that for the sake of continuity, it actually kind of makes sense to be in one place for a couple of years. But I took it on not realizing it was in their afternoon meeting, so if there's anyone with lots of afternoon free time, I can pass the torch, but if not, I'm happy to be there for another year, I'm not desperate to pass on.
Yeah, considering what your concern is with that, then I don't think that makes sense for me to step into.
Yeah, that would be like,
Hmm.
I guess we'll go through them individually at our next,
Yeah.
maybe the whole meeting. Got time
This
to
gives
think
you
about
time to
any,
And
contemplate
mull it
things.
over.
time to roll the dice.
So are we receiving the report? No, it's just for.
It's already, you've received it by adopting the agenda.
No further discussion?